Dr. Tony Holohan, in his recently published memoir, We Need to Talk, good-humoredly notes that his 5 sisters believed that he, as an older brother, was given greater privileges and more freedom than the girls. The girls tell the story that his mother's parents once sent 10 Irish pounds in an envelope as their Christmas present, and that of the 10 pounds, there was 5 pounds for Tony and 5 to be split between the girls. Today's parable from Matthew's Gospel is one of the briefest, where Jesus tells the story of 2 brothers. Asked by their father to work in the vineyard, one said he would go, but he didn't. The other said he wouldn't go, but then he did. Jesus then asks his audience, consisting of chief priests and elders, which of the 2 brothers did the will of the Father? Jesus' listeners took debate and took sides. Short as this parable is, it suggests that the 2 brothers are embroiled in a form of intense rivalry, to the extent that they always say the opposite of what the other says, and do the opposite as well. That is to say, they react to each other and not at all to the Father. Both then have failed to respond to the Father, and both are in need of forgiveness and mercy. Psychotherapist Richard Hogan writes informatively about sibling rivalry, noting that your sibling is generally the first person you compare yourself to, and that can be the cause of much suffering. Parents can often unconsciously pit sibling against sibling, making subtle comparisons and comments that position one above the other. Parents rarely think their children are listening when they talk about them, but they are. And these comments can be the source of deep-rooted rivalry. Hogan, speaking from the experience of his clinical practice, argues that siblings often have fractured relationships and struggle to understand the reason for their conflict. The reading from Ezekiel is an intriguing source of insight. It is in Ezekiel chapter 18 that individual ethical responsibility is clearly taught for the first time, breaking away from a sense that God might be punishing the children for the sins of their ancestors. Our second reading from Paul to the Philippians is also strikingly helpful. The impactful spiritual writer Richard Rohr draws from this reading in his powerful book, The Naked Now, Listening to See as the Mystics See. Rohr, in his writing, encourages the daily practice of contemplative prayer. In contemplative prayer, we empty ourselves of our thoughts and wishes and desires so as to be filled with God, even when God's fullness feels empty. Often, St. Paul speaks about the joy of giving, not only with money, but in time and energy and concern for others. Christ humbles himself to enter the human condition and suffer the same vulnerabilities, including death, which humans suffer from. We can't compete with Christ in generosity, but we can at least empty ourselves of what we do and what we do have for the sake of others. The unforgettable musical Les Miserables relays a poignant truth that you can give without loving, but you can never love without giving. The great acts of love are done by those who are habitually performing small acts of kindness. We pardon to the extent that we love. Love is knowing that even when you are alone, you will never be lonely again. Emotionally, Les Miserables sings, "To love or have loved, that is enough. Ask nothing further. There is no other pearl to be found in the dark folds of life." In both deep prayer and in action, our self-emptying is ideally modeled on Christ. We pour out our humanity as a gift to God and in return receive Christ's divinity as a gift. Many early church fathers, among them Irenaeus, said that God became human so that humans could become God. This does not mean we become God. It means that we are filled with the non-rivalrous love of God so as to become more fully human than ever. It is a powerfully sober thought to reflect that Jesus chose to enter our humanity because walking on this earth as a human being is a good thing. Siblings seem to bring out the best and worst in one another. Richard Hogan reasons that the more conflicted a person is with a sibling, the more likely it is that the sibling reminds them of something they dislike about themselves. Our scriptures today offer a pathway to contentment, suggesting that the practice of contemplative prayer, along with a spirituality of giving, will help root us in the conviction that it is never too late to speak and pray blessings over our relationships. Amen.